everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Hunter. I'm a USCF National Master, and I'm going to talk a bit about why I'm making this channel. So I started making my chess puzzles or chess compositions during the pandemic, and I got into the process really quickly. I really began enjoying it. So I shared it with some of my chess friends, and they were also both challenged by them and they enjoyed them. So with this channel, I kind of just want to reach a wider audience with my chess puzzles, and I hope that other people will be able to not only learn from them, but probably more importantly, just to enjoy the aesthetic value of them. While a lot of my puzzles might be quite challenging for most players, I'll try to explain them in a fairly thorough manner and also a way in which I would say less experienced players would also still be able to understand some of the main ideas, if not every detail. One brief logistical thing, I made the studies on Lichess, and I'll link those Lichess studies below. So if for any reason you're curious or you think I messed something up and you just want to look at the puzzle more in depth, you can feel free to click on those links and look at the puzzles. I'm pretty excited. Let's get into it.
Alright, let's take a look at the first puzzle. This one's white to move, and you can pause the video and try to solve it if you would like to. I'll give you a few seconds. Let's look at the solution. So the first thing we note is that material is roughly even, but black's king is a lot less safe than white's. It turns out there's only one way to take advantage, and that's bishop to g1 check, a clever little check. The first point is queen takes g1, loses to queen a7 with the skewer. After black moves the king, we can just take the queen. So instead of queen takes g1, black might try king to c4. However, this immediately gets mated with queen b3 checkmate. Knight f2 is probably the best try for black objectively, but after bishop takes f2, white just has an extra piece and a winning position. So after bishop g1, king d5, black might try. And now how does white continue? c4 is the move. The first point is king takes c4, then queen b3 is a similar checkmate to the one we saw before. But if not that, then black has to play king to e6. But now white has queen c8 with the second skewer. Black moves the king somewhere, and we just take the queen. Now you understand why this one's called skewered little, because black can avoid the first skewer, but runs into the second one. Let's take a look at another composition which I've created. This one's definitely trickier than the last one. It's white to move, and you can pause and try to solve it if you want. Let's look at the solution. So it begins knight b6 check, king a7, and now rook a2, the first important moment. White's threatening king b4 checkmate. Let's look at why other moves don't work. Rook b4 is a possibility, threatening rook a4 checkmate, but black stops this easily, king a6, and now we realize white has nothing better than the perpetual rook a4 check, king b5, rook b4 check, king a6, rook a4, etc. Note king c5 runs into knight d7 check with the fork. Instead, king b4 on the second move is also a try for white, threatening rook a2 mate, but after queen g8, rook a2 is no longer possible, and black gets a tempo to play king b8 to c7. This is not winning. We return to rook a2. There are a few points to this move. First, king a6 does not work on account of king b4, that's checkmate, as white cuts off the b5 square. There are a few other options. Queen g3 is possible, but any move which vacates the 8th rank for black runs into this following line. King b4 check, king b8, rook a8, king c7, and rook c8, and that's a checkmate. Note this configuration with the pawn here, the knight, and a rook or a queen is a pretty common checkmating idea. That's a good one to know. A third try for black is queen e8 or queen h8. It's pretty similar. And now king b4, king b8, rook a8 check, king c7. And we see that the queen is hanging, but we can't take that. That would be stalemate. But it's actually pretty easy to solve this issue. We throw in the intermezzo or intermediate move, knight d5 check. And then on the next move, we can just take the queen with the winning position. So on the second move, black's best try is queen to g8, hitting the rook on a2, And now we continue with king b2 check, giving a discover check and supporting the rook on a2. King b8 is forced, rook a8, king c7. And now there are a few different possibilities for white. The first one might be drawn to is, okay, so again first, rook takes g8 would just be stalemate. We can't do that. White might try to get clever and play rook c8 and go into this pawn endgame. But as it turns out, this is actually a draw. There's a long forced line, which you can look at if you click on the link to this study below. I won't really get into it, but yeah, this ends up being a draw. So in this position, there are some other tries for white. White can realize the following thing. Black really does not have very many moves. If black were to just randomly move the queen somewhere, then rook c8 would be checkmate. So black's next move has to control the c8 square. With that in mind, white could try to pass a move, essentially, with something like king c2. But this is actually a big mistake, in particular because of queen b3, this sacrifice to force stalemate, because after king takes b3, it's, again, the stalemate we've seen before, but you can't really refuse this. So as it turns out in this position, only king c1 works. This is a nice move to just get out of the b3 sacrifice. Another point is queen c4 check doesn't work because knight c4, it's no longer stalemate. Black has a couple other moves, queen e8, but that is knight d5, and queen h8. Also, white has knight d5, followed by picking up the queen. So queen e6 is the only try for black, controlling the c8 square. And now, actually, black does have a sneaky little threat. He wants to play queen f5, where he's hitting c5 and threatening queen f1 check. And that would be a pretty big issue. So white has only one way to stop that, rook f8. Now queen f5 we could just take and there's no stalemate. And this position is actually a zugzwang for black. That is, every move that black has worsens his position. One try for black would be queen e8, but that runs into either knight a8 or knight d5, followed by picking up the queen. We've seen that a few times. Queen g8 is the other try with the last trap. Knight d5 check, then queen takes d5. That would be pretty sad for white, but we don't have to do that. Instead, after queen g8, we just play knight a8, king d7, and rook takes g8 with the winning position.
Alright, let's take a look at one more puzzle that I made. This one's white to move. You can pause the video and try to solve it while I give you a few seconds. Alright, let's take a look at the solution. So at first we note that black is trying to play queen e2, so we should play knight c4 to cut off the queen and stop that. And now black has a few different defenses, but I think knight b6 is the most interesting one. We'll look at the other ones after. And now white should continue with knight f to d6, hitting the queen and also supporting the knight on c4. We should see that knight fe3 is not a good move. It does support the knight on c4, but black can play knight a4, which is a pretty clever move. The idea is after ba4, queen b1 is now possible, hitting the bishop. And after bishop b2, just b5, hitting the knight and trying to go b4. This is not what we want as white. So instead, knight fd6. Black has nothing other than knight takes c4 check, knight takes c4. And now we see that there really are just no possibilities for the black queen. So black has to move a pawn, and b6 is the best try. a4 is also possible, but we'll understand pretty quickly why b6 is a better try. So after b6, if it were black's turn, he would really have to go a4 and then ab3, but we could just recapture. Then black would really just have to move his king b7, but of course this is the entire point. Knight d6 is now possible with this fork, so we're trying to put black in zugzwang. To this end, the most natural move to consider would be bishop b2, just moving the bishop, passing essentially. But actually this is a horrible blunder, because this cuts off the flight square of our king, and now black can play queen b4 check. And after takes, king a4, b5 is actually a very bizarre mate. So yeah, we would not want to fall for this one. Luckily, we have another way that we can pass the move back to black, and that's king to b2 instead, also getting our king out of that awkward situation. And now black's really going to get into zugzwang.
So a4, we can play king b1. This is not the only move, but it's an easy way to win. And after ab3, black has to go for king b7, but knight d6. And we're just up a piece with the winning endgame. So let's just quickly return to the beginning. After knight c4, we looked at knight b6, but instead of knight b6, they could also try b6. But again, we just played king b2, not bishop b2, which would fall for the same trick as before. But king b2, and it's going to be a similar zugzwang. And a4 here, or on the third move, really just only limits black's possibilities, because there's no more queen b4 tricks. White could even go for bishop b2 here.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed the puzzles or you got something out of them. If they were too easy for you, then don't worry, because I definitely have a lot more challenging puzzles lined up. And if some of these were a little too hard for you, that's totally okay. I'll also be looking at some simpler ones too, so I'll definitely cover a range of puzzles.